I can share a little bit that I used to do a lot of fee-for-service clinical work in community mental health as a fee-for-service. So that model that you get paid for the service that you provide. And oftentimes when client would not show up or will cancel late, I would find myself sitting in almost like quote unquote doing nothing or doing some paperwork. So whatever considered a billable hour is no longer a billable hour. And later on, I transitioned to private practice. It's great. So I went through that. It was painful and yet overcome it. The idea for the book actually came from a work that I did with one of my patients who was a fee-for-service. And hearing from him about the pain of doing this kind of work is what really motivated me to write about it and to write a book. And in the process of inviting different people to write, I met Maria and wanted to offer her to write a chapter about postgraduate training, her experiences in fee-for-service in a psychodynamic clinic. And just like, I guess I never told you that, but I fell in love. And there was something about our bouncing back ideas that I would say something and she's like, yeah, but you can do it differently.
Yeah, it was like love at first Zoom. We hit it up immediately. And I think part of my main impression was like, oh my God, all the things that I've always thought about working in outpatient setting as a fee-for-service, I felt so validated in Liat's questions and concerns. And when I started sharing my own experience, I was like, yeah, this is exactly what we want to write about. So it went from me being invited to a chapter to being co-writers and editors, and it's been a very fun journey.
It looks like an amazing book. And like I said, right when we started talking, I wish I had this book when I was finishing grad school, because they really don't prepare you for what you have to do. You're kind of like just doing next step to next step and like just trying to figure it out as you go along. I luckily had like somebody that was a year before me in school that I became friends with, and she kind of helped me through each step of school and everything. And I'm so thankful for her. Shout out to Heather Farrow. I love you. But I don't know what I would have done without Heather. It's like she got me through everything.
Yeah, and I think we've all had people like that, and precisely we wanted to create a book that was like the one-stop place for people to get those questions answered, and sometimes even knowing what questions to ask, because it's basically 99% of the book is everything you wanted to know about fee-for-service and you were too afraid to ask.
Yeah, and especially for people, like I try to really gear the podcast. I know people listen in all kind of ages and levels of training and experience and everything, but I really try to gear things towards people that are starting out and have those kinds of questions. And especially for people who are in school, that maybe they're the first generation in their family to go to college or to higher education, and they don't have anybody to ask about what it's like, or the family doesn't understand, or their parents don't understand. It's really helpful to have people kind of lay it out for you like this.
Yeah.
I think that also the nature of social work specifically, but I think about other mental health degrees, and that because you're doing a lot of field work voluntarily during your MSW, for example, then it's almost that it's okay for you to work for free to some degree once you're out in the field. And the reality of the fee-for-service is that we have part of it in one of our chapters. What is the fee and what is the service? Because you think that you're actually going to get paid for every service, but the reality is that you don't know what's your paycheck between week to week. Depends on the amount of clients that are coming in. So I think that there is systematically in the sense of social justice, we have a problem here. Fee-for-service in private practice is very different than fee-for-service when you do it in the clinic, when you're still working towards your clinical licensing. So we really want to prepare our readers to work with that phenomena, since we understand that we cannot make changes in the macro level, but we want our readers to be aware that what can they do in order to minimize the amount of cancellation and no-shows, and really to be more in control of the amount of money that they're making, which I think that other thing that we have, when we wrote that book, we realized that we don't talk a lot about money when we deal with social work. And it's just like that thing about just be happy with what you have, which awesome, but at the same time, we're operating from billable hours kind of approach that we want our readers to feel entitled and feel good about, no, I'm charging, I want to be able to be in charge of the cancellations and protect myself in that sense.
Yeah, because it's already a field where people going into it are helping, right? And so a lot of people going into it too are used to kind of denying themselves in service of the other a bit, which can be very admirable, but also, you need to live. You
and I
don't
think
want to be completely depleted.
Right. And to model for patients that it's okay to take care of ourselves and put value to our work.
Absolutely. So what kinds of things are in the book?
You want to go?
I want to go with my favorite. I mean, I love the research part that we did. I think that's, to me, I mean, I don't know, you and I, Liat, we talked much about it, but I think aside from the step-by-step how to do your clinical practice, the research project that we conducted in which we interviewed how many? Quite a few clinicians from different backgrounds about their fee-for-service experience. And it was a mixed method study. So we did a quantitative part and a qualitative where we interviewed people from different stages in their career. And it was so rewarding. And we learned so much about the strategies that therapists use to survive in the fee-for-service world in clinics.
Yeah.
For example, write your progress notes when the patient cancels, or how to make the most out of those times of those services that are not billed and therefore are not paid. And the importance of community, right? That was a big takeaway from that chapter as well, that it can be a very isolating work. Yeah. And that finding networks, good supervision, it's so important.
Yeah. And so I think that what our participants really found is that there is a pros and cons, like every job. One of the things that stood out for them is the variety of clients that you expose and you can see. But they also talked about the burnout and this idea that you really don't know who will come and who will not come. You can come to work and expect to see 8 clients, but you would see just 6 or 5, sometimes less, sometimes more. And for many of them, it was just like a transitional time. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do the fee-for-service work, and then I would move into private practice and be on my own. But to circle, just to take a step back in terms of what the book is like, we're starting with macro, just talking about fee-for-service in general, and then talking about fee-for-service in community mental health and in the mental health field, which is very different than seeing like a physician in the hospital. And so just Chapter 1 is really about what are we looking at what does it mean to be a fee-for-service mental health clinician, and then Chapter 2, as Maria was referring, that was really the study. So we heard about it from the literature, that was the macro, and now we're gonna hear it from firsthand experiences of those who are doing the work themselves, and we love the research. It was very, very powerful. And then we go into few chapters that were really understanding what are some of the ingredients that you need to have in order to be successful in doing fee-for-service work. So we have a chapter written by a supervisor in the agency that really talks about how to handle the no-shows, how to speak about cancellations, how to use supervision in the agency in the right way. And then we have another chapter that is actually written by a head of a clinic, and that specifically address the element of what do you need to know before you get hired? How do you negotiate your salary? What question do you really need to ask? So written by the director of the clinic. He gives advice in a way to our readers about what they need to know before they come in. And then we have actually another chapter that was born while we're working on the book. What we see the more and more graduates of MSW in that sense, or other clinical degrees, are not just going to work to do clinical work in a clinic, in community mental health, but they're also going to group practices. And so this is something that is developing and evolving, many more group practices. So we have one person who is writing about her experience in a group practice. She talks a lot about the pros and the cons and the level of the freedom that she can have in working in a group practice. And with that being said, we really wanted the book to be inclusive towards all kind of fee-for-service jobs, whether it's in a community mental health or in a group practice, as long as you're doing clinical work. Should I continue?
Sure.
Then we have another chapter that look at the next few chapters are almost like a transition. So we believe, like, at the beginning, you graduate from school, you take your first job, you're doing fee-for-service. It's quite overwhelming. You try to understand how to do it, how to minimize cancellations, etc. And then you realize that you need supervision, or like maybe that the supervision in the agency is not sufficient because it's just sometimes dealing, unfortunately, with administrative stuff, crisis intervention, etc. So our next chapter looks at supervision. It's written by two clinicians. One is a supervisor in an agency, and another one is an external supervisor. Actually happened to be my supervisor. So when I used to work in the clinic, I would not feel that the supervision in-house in the clinic is enough, and I would go to her, pay her privately to talk about cases and to develop my clinical skills. So we have that chapter, and I think that that was Maria's idea, that at some point you're like, wow, I really need to advance my skills. I'm not ahead of my client in the way I'm thinking about it, and so we developed a chapter about postgraduating programs. It doesn't necessarily speak about the programs, but it really talks about how to choose the right program for you. How do you know what is it that you need in order to support yourself in your career? And also, like, how does it all play in your work and your personal life and all of that? So we're really covering some of the things that you need to check when you're deciding that you want to do a postgraduate training, and how to choose the right one for you.
And we wanted it to be very democratic, at least in the way we try to approach it. And by the way, the whole name of the book was going to be from grad school to private practice and everything in between, because we wanted to honor the fact that not everyone may have the same route. And we do talk about postgraduate training, but also for people who decide not to join institutes. Ways to do their own, like, self-learning, ways to connect with other communities, including psychotherapy as a vital source of education and learning about the self. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to cover every possible aspect of it, honoring the fact that not everyone may think that private practice is the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like an absolutely wonderful resource, and I'm so glad that you created this book together. It sounds like you found a lot of wonderful contributors as well.
Yeah, wonderful contributors, and also people that we encounter, from our past. And when I started my group practice back in the days, I actually started with someone who was 2 years into her LMSW, and she writes another chapter, which is the transition from fee-for-service clinical from community mental health to private practice. And I remember the minute that she got her LCSW, her clinical license, she said, I'm done doing group practice with you. I'm going to start my own practice. And I saw that the way she did it was adorable and so professional, and with so much gut and good energy. Because oftentimes what we see is that people are just afraid to start their own practices. And so the next phase of the book is really covering this idea of, like, what do you need to do in order to start your own private practice? So she gives her own words of encouragement through her own journey into opening her private practice. But then we're really going into details in the next few chapters, looking at what does it mean to have successful practice, and also how do you use innovative technologies that there are many of them in order to advance yourself and develop like a good source of referrals and work, not just do private pay, out of pocket, but also do work with insurance companies, but without the hassle. So we have a whole chapter that really, it was a literature review related to all the opportunities that are out there that people are not necessarily familiar with in order to advance yourself in private practice. And what we did there is we really reached out to each one of those companies and asked them to give us a statement about what do they do and how do they help clinician, how do they help client. And these are all startups that have been developed in the last 5-6 years. I think I wanna just dedicate one more word to one more chapter that again was just developed towards the end of our journey of writing the book, which is about the journey to private practice for creative arts therapists. So art therapist, movement therapist, and I'm sure that there is more that I'm forgetting right now under this umbrella, but because of their licensing type, it's harder for them to start their own private practice. And we really wanted to give them a voice in the book and see what are some of the challenges and how is one overcome them. So we have a chapter that is dedicated for the creative arts therapist.
That's wonderful. I have 2 very close friends who are both creative arts therapists. And yeah, it seems to be so difficult, and they're constantly cutting their programs. Like when I first was starting out and I worked at a hospital in Brooklyn, like a New York City hospital, we had creative arts therapists like in the inpatient units and things. And I thought, oh, this is so amazing. But after like a year of me being there, they were gone. They just keep cutting their programs and their funding. And it's so terrible.
And I like that this chapter is written as a testimony, and it's a very realistic one that gives a lot of hope to potential art clinicians, but also very realistic, right? And that's also something else that I'm hoping people will find interesting and attractive about the book, that it's a little bit of testimony, a little bit of research, and we're hoping to save a lot of time that people will spend doing research on what softwares to use or what venues use to advertise their practices. So it's basically different styles in one.
Yeah, and really practical. I really wish I had this when I was starting out. I feel like everything was just like, just trying to figure out what's next. And also you're always coming off of, like you mentioned, like you have to go to internship and you don't really get paid anything. And then the whole time you're in school, you're doing all this work and you're not getting paid. And, it's like you're really struggling for years building up to like trying to create your practice,
Yeah, and just like the fear that people have, and especially with transitioning to private practice, that there people are afraid of being self-employed. That how are they going to take care of health insurance? How are they going to? What if the client doesn't show up? But then how do we install the believe in them that you're your own boss, meaning like you can create your own policies for your own practice, and definitely you can do it. And so much of some of the chapters in the book working on around self-esteem and building the confidence that you need personally and professionally to feel good about your services and what you have to offer to people, and not necessarily just say, oh, don't worry about it, I won't charge you for X, Y, and Z. So I think that's another thing. And one more important aspect of the book is also that we have a chapter about the ingredients that you need in order to start private practice, starting from creating a national provider ID to how to use your social security number or not, how to submit a claim for health insurance, what is a CPT code, like all those things that I remember myself at the beginning was a lot of Googling search of what does this even mean. So it's all in the book for people to learn and educate themselves.
Right, because for those who work at a clinic, they see those things in operation all the time, but there isn't an open line of communication in which clinicians understand how billing works or how policy works. So we wanted to bring that together. to empower people to start their own.
Absolutely, that's wonderful. And too, like you said, that's so great to help people build up the confidence to do it on their own, because that's so true. I remember I was part-time in the hospital and part-time private practice for a few years. And I remember when I was leaving, my supervisor was like, well, good luck. I don't know how all of you leaving think that you're going to make it in private practice. And I was just like, thanks.
I've heard
Thanks for
that
the
too.
support and the good word, you know? They really
Yeah.
scare you, but that's how they get you to work for these corporations. It's like the military. It's like the US is never going to give everyone health care in
Absolutely.
college, because that's how they get people to go in the military and how they get them to work for these corporations, you know?
Well, yeah, that's the thing about mission-based professions, right? That if you set boundaries or try to own your work, it's like they make you believe that you're failing. And that's also part of where we come, and we're trying to change that narrative as well. And that we also don't have to be the Ubers of mental health, right? We don't have to internalize the gig economy, that it is possible to start a practice where you can balance work and life. That's also some of what we're trying to convey, that it might be a difficult journey, but certainly a very rewarding one.
Yeah, absolutely. And finding your own particular voice. And like you said, whether you want to like do postdoc training in an institute, or if you want to like do it on your own, or, what kind of different models that you're interested in, you can explore so much. That's one of the things I love about the field too, is like you can teach, you can do clinical work in hospitals and private practice. There's like so many different things you can end up doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually Liat and I were both wear different hats, right? Teaching, writing, supervising. Yeah,
exactly. And that keeps it always like fresh and interesting and new and evolving and constantly learning, and doesn't get stale.
No, it's quite a journey to teach in the MSW program, and to do the work and to supervise. So there is always like clinical stuff, but also the behind the scenes of, and always I called my group practice almost like an incubator for private practice, because I really believe that once they're getting their license, the people who work with me, they need to venture and be on their own. There is no reason for them not to do private practice, and develop their skills on their own. I think it's a field that is is developing, and I think that I think the pioneering of our book is that we're really inviting a conversation about it, and inviting a conversation about making money and making business out of psychotherapy, and something that you can actually, it's profitable.
And it's valued, because it is undervalued, like in the medical field, it's totally undervalued, and it shouldn't be, because there's like a million studies showing like people are healthier, people are happier. There's so many benefits when people are in psychotherapy. Like they can literally prove it, like physically. One of my rotations was like the reason we still had funding was because they could prove like people that were getting dialysis, if they were in therapy, they would heal faster, they would do better with transplants. I used to run like a transplant group, for people who had just had like cardiac transplants or kidney transplants or liver transplants. And they would heal better if they were like doing talk therapy, so there's like so many like provable benefits that you would think it would be more valued.
yeah, no, the split is still there. I mean, the mind-body problem should no longer be a problem. We know they're just both completely interrelated. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm not one big on things having to be proven, but like they are. So like, come on.
and for policy development, I mean, people need those numbers, right? So, I mean, it's good that there's people devoting research efforts for that as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. How did you both get interested in mental health in the first place?
I don't know if my mom will listen to the podcast, but a borderline mother is all what you need in order to get into the mental health field. I think that my own personal, I should say, deprivation in some ways is what led me to support and seek understand myself and understand how to best help those who want to do better for themselves but don't quite know how.
If it makes you feel better, I'm also one because of my mom, and she did find that out from the podcast once. And I was talking to, I think, Lara Shiha. My mom's like, "Hey, I thought we had a perfect relationship."
Oh my God.
Like,
Well,
okay,
I'm
Mom.
lucky.
You should invite her for to the podcast, maybe.
Oh my God.
So
I'm
everyone
lucky
can understand.
My mom doesn't speak English, so I'm lucky, but same applies for me. Narcissistic mother in my case, including
mom.
not having a space to process feelings and wanting to create that space. So other people that didn't have that chance or that need a different space, they can do that. Yeah, and in my case, psychoanalysis was pretty much a synonym for me of psychotherapy growing up. I mean, having been born, raised, and trained in Uruguay, I mean, people think of psychoanalysis and psychotherapy as synonyms, and every other approach is considered very foreign. So yes.
Must be amazing. I would love to be in a culture where psychoanalysis was like ubiquitous part of the culture.
Yeah. We practice psychoanalysis in psychiatric hospitals, prisons, public schools. Yes,
Wonderful.
It's a standard method.
That's wonderful. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention that we didn't get to?
I think that we are both we need to practice how to market ourselves better. Beside the fact that the book is unique, and you know, when you write a book, you always do a market analysis, and this book is first to be written in the topic, but in sense of the topic is really to cover the journey. So when we're thinking about our book, we're thinking about so many different audience that can benefit from the book and reading it, and also we're inviting actually students to have the book, because there is so much discussion that can be done around the topic. Moving, you know, if I'm reflecting back to writing that book, I would actually think that we needed to write another chapter at the beginning of the book about how to best prepare yourself while you're a student to the fit for service, in terms of writing your resume proactively, get your license exam, sign up for an NPI, be ready with your blurb for Psychology Today or any other advertising. So I think that we would in many ways soon start working on the second edition, in the sense of covering that part, and then at the end of the book working on, once you have done enough private practice, how do you develop it to a group practice? So what does it mean to expand your psychotherapy one-on-one to a group practice, and be more profitable, supervise others and support others? There is so much to speak about the quality of the work, and we can definitely provide good quality for our clients, but in order to provide good quality, you need a good space, and you need a good supervisor, and you need to be paid well. And we wanna make sure that when we're writing the second edition for the book, this is all coming in. But what we have covered in this first edition is absolutely fantastic. But reflecting back, there is more that can be done.
Yeah, you always think of things you could add afterwards. But it's really fantastic because, like I said, the second I saw this book go by my feed, I immediately contacted Maria. I was like, this is amazing. I have to talk to you too, because I haven't seen anything like you said, it's the first of its kind, and it's so important, and so many different people can use this as a fantastic resource.
Yeah, we try to become the voice, the mentor that we wish we had, and maybe borrowing those voices from the people that we did have.
Yeah, and that's wonderful to get to work with people that have been part of your own trajectories. That must have been really kind of special, kind of full circle moments with that.
Yeah. Well, the clinic director, he was my supervisor. So that's also very special too.
Yeah. And that's, by the way, one of the things that we are talking about in the book, about connections. and how important it is to keep connections and be in touch, and always be humble with your time of like, spare 30 minutes to speak with someone, exchange an email, sit for coffee, because you eventually at some point you would meet them in your future career, like things cross passes. And the funny part about writing this book through the time of COVID is Maria and I have never met in person, which is we have a funny story about a good friend of mine sitting for dinner, and he meets
in New Jersey.
In New Jersey, he meets this woman, parentheses, happened to be Maria, who's saying that she wrote a book about fee for services, and that person says, "Oh, I have a very good friend. Her name is Liat. She's also writing about this topic. You guys should talk to each other." Maria is saying, "Oh my God, this is the person I'm writing the book with." So our friends meet each other before we
did. Yes, that was so funny.
And so you're both in Manhattan and you haven't met.
Yes. And we never met. No,
I thought at least then you must be in different cities.
No. And it was Liat, your pregnancy. I mean, so much in the middle. Moving places. No, it's been, it started during the pandemic.
Amazing. It sounds like it's been a pretty productive couple of years then.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we really want to also thank our publishing house, Cognella. Has been super supportive, accommodating when we're running late with timelines, when we need some help with certain things. In the process of writing some of the chapters, we received chapters that were just not something that we decided that we want to publish in the book. So how do you turn down, which is always hard and painful, and Cognella has been super supportive and helpful with that. So it was a very positive journey for both of us.
Yes.
Yeah, and it sounds like the book was evolving and expanding and growing while you were creating it. Like it kept kind of changing form a bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you for the invitation. I mean, I'm a huge fan. I've been listening to you since the beginning, but no agenda, just let it flow and
just see what happens. Sometimes I have the book, sometimes I don't. Sometimes they're analysts, sometimes they're artists or students.
Yes.
Let's just see what people are doing. That sounds interesting. Try to expose people doing things that look like good and interesting things that I want to promote. And like I said, always kind of trying to center the people that are up and coming. And I always try to think about that,
Well, in the spirit of promotion, I wanted to share one of my websites, psychoanalysisandSocialJustice.com.
Ooh,
it's just a total labor of love where I mean, it's a little bit behind, but I'm trying to create a shared database of events, videos, books, articles, anything related to psychoanalysis and social justice. You're going to see a lot of rendering unconscious episodes in the website.
Oh, really?
Yes.
How nice.
And events around. So anytime I run into something that might apply, I just post it there. And there's an Excel spreadsheet on the website where anyone can jump in. It's open to the public. Anyone can jump in and add their bibliography. I'm hoping it will be a good tool for researchers or anyone writing, where they can have one place there you can see different bibliography, different subtopics around violence, oppression, poverty, etc.
That's wonderful. What a wonderful resource. And anytime, like when your second edition comes out or any other books or events that you do, you're both welcome back individually or together. Anytime, just let me know. Just send me an email. We can always set something up. Great. Or if you have any friends or colleagues that you think are doing good work, feel free to send them my way too, because I'm always looking for good people.
Great. Will do.
Yeah, wonderful. And don't forget to invite us for your next podcast about borderline narcissistic mothers.
I'm going to complain about our moms. People can relate, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.